Okay, glad you're back on the Investigative Journal on this Friday before the Labor Day holiday. I'm sure everybody's got something big planned, and I've got something big planned for you today. I picked out three stories, and then I want you to pick one. How am I going to know, though, what you're picking? So I'm going to have to pick one. I think I'll just flip a coin. And I picked three stories out today, and I'm going to talk about one first, then of course the second one and the third one, and I doubt if I'll get through them all, but what can you do? You're under time constraints. We only have an hour today, and I'm going to first discount stories. It's kind of like life. How do you know what you want to do in life? Usually it's a process of elimination. I'm not good at this, I'm not good at this, but I can do this. So it's the same thing here. So we're going to rule out anything that has to do with Trump and the follies of Washington, D.C., that Hegelian dialectic story where the left and the right supposedly are fighting against each other tooth and nail to get their view of America out to the public, and that's the way it is. We have, of course, the Trump people who believe in America first, then we have the new Socialist Democratic Party who believe in globalism. I believe both of them work together for the goal of globalism and a one world government, a one world order, which is coming to everyone. Just look at what's going on in China. So we're going to forget about everything in the government today. We're going to forget almost about everything in the Vatican-led New World Order. I talk about that all the time. Frankly, I don't feel like talking about it on Friday today, but there's a little bit involvement in one of the stories, not much. And probably behind the scenes they're involved in all of it, but we'll just cover it from a more, we'll gloss over it, so to speak. Okay, so the three stories that I picked out were this, and what do you think is more important? Okay, one is the government preparing us for global war. Is it on the table? And of course, you're not invited at the table where they're planning it. Or two, what's your thoughts about the way the earth is shaped, what we live on? And isn't it sad that we can't believe really anybody regarding how the earth is formed? Many people say it's a globe spinning around the sun. Others say we don't move and it's a globe, a sphere. And then others say the earth is flat. Then there's a number of different versions of the flat earth. But it's kind of interesting because remember what Aldous Huxley said. He said that our belief systems occur because we're conditioned to believe certain things. And that is true to an extent, isn't it? You're conditioned to believe certain things from hearing about them from the time you're in school, like the heliocentric globe Earth. You're conditioned to believe in a certain religion from the time you're a child. And that's interesting. If I grew up as a Buddhist in a Buddhist country, I wouldn't believe in the Bible, would I? And then if I grew up a devout Christian, I wouldn't believe in Buddhism until maybe I had a shift in my belief system. How does that occur? Well, the Hindus say that you cannot believe something until you disbelieve it, and that it's like a circle, a constant circle. So you go full circle. I disbelieve in God, and then I go full circle and I believe in Him. Or I believe in God and I go full circle and I disbelieve in Him and become an atheist. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. And then the third subject is this interesting story that's always overlooked regarding American atheists. And I was just watching a Netflix movie that came out on Madalyn Murray O'Hair, the founder of the American Atheist Society, who met a grisly death. And I'm going to maybe do a little bit on that. But the question becomes, was she connected with the Jesuits at all? That's never covered. I checked and I checked and I checked. Couldn't find anything. But it makes a lot of sense to me because they're always playing that game of creating this kind of organization in order to pit the Christians against Madalyn Murray O'Hair and the American Atheists. And boy, she was considered to be the most hated woman in America. And I couldn't find anything on that yet. But I did find something interesting about her story. And that is, boy, she made millions and millions of dollars. And that was all money that was put into offshore accounts. And the IRS never got onto her, even before, many, many years this was going on before she was killed. And there's a Netflix movie about that. I'll talk a little bit about that, but I always wondered why she would be able to get away with that. Wouldn't they be watching her closely? So I was thinking that the money laundering and all the money that she had in these offshore accounts, she was being protected. The IRS was not looking into her. Don't you think they should look into this organization? She was getting donations, millions and millions of dollars. Where did it come from? Why wasn't there closer attention to her finances when, in fact, the IRS, even during the Obama administration, was targeting Christian organizations? And we've seen that here on my show many times, Christian groups being targeted by the IRS. And it's interesting because that gives me an idea that she was protected. And we know the IRS is nothing more than the Pope's collection agency. So that's an interesting story. But let's get back quickly. Now, I guess it wouldn't matter if you look at this, any of these stories, if there was a global war tomorrow. So many people will say, well, that's the most important story. But then again, since there isn't a global war, don't we want to get into these other stories? So what's more important? The story about the atheists? Now, I like that story from the aspect of whether the Jesuits were connected, and did they use this, and was this another Hegelian dialectic to really pit Christianity against atheism in America? What did it have? What happened? She took a case to the Supreme Court and outlawed saying prayers, outlawing the Bible and saying prayers in public schools. Now, if you want a strict interpretation of that, when you have a difference between public education and private education, when you go to public school, you're going to meet a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds: Buddhists, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Catholics, what else? Atheists, agnostics. And is it right to force a kid to say a prayer when he's not a Christian? I believe in public schools that everyone should be treated fairly and not one group over another. So, if you basically want prayers, or you're a Protestant, there are Protestant schools. You can homeschool. If you want your child brought up as a Catholic, there are Catholic schools, and so on and so forth. So, in a sense, public schools should be fair to all, is my idea. I'm not saying that I disagree with praying and doing all the, or those who bow down east to Mecca, or studying as a Buddhist, nothing like that. But you can't everybody can't do it all in one morning, unless the teacher could say something. Spend a moment, spend a minute of silence, reflecting on your own faith, and wish for a good day. How's that? Taking God out of the, in God we trust, taking God out of everything, that's a subject that is there to inflame people. And in a sense, in a country where you should have a division between church and state, it seems to me that everyone should be treated fairly. Now, if you're in a country where everybody's the same, so be it. But you're not. So let's try to be fair even to people who are minorities in different faiths, because, as I said, a belief system sometimes is based on how you're brought up, based on persuasion, based on conditioning, things like that. And we are all brought up in different means. So when you talk about this story, that's what I think you have to deal with first. Secondly, this idea of the flat earth, it's always interested me, because I said to myself, there's one thing I really want to do before I leave. I'd like to know exactly what I'm living on here, you know. And I get so many different theories when I bring this up. And I say, well, you know, my observations and what I've read really makes me believe that it's really kind of hard to believe, like I once did, that the earth is a sphere and it rotates around the sun. Then I said, it's hard to believe that the earth is stationary and it's a sphere. And then I said, okay, what other shape go? Well, it could be flat with the ice wall around it and then a barrier at the top. And let's stick to those three, because I guess it could be, what other shapes could it be? People can chime in on that if they like, but those are probably the three that people talk about the most. And every time I concentrate and I say, well, listen, open your mind to this flat earth thing, because I'd like to know, and I think you'd like to know, exactly what we live on. And doesn't it really you know, highlight the world we live in? I mean, if we are lied about all these different things, well, let's look at it. You can't believe NASA. That's the big you know, heliocentric spinning globe group that spread this all over the world since Copernicus did in the 1500s. Then you have the Bible, which, you know, is not a great authority on this either, because it really isn't, it's not like in Genesis it says, okay, this is the exact shape and size of your earth, which if I was God, I might have done that. Would have made it easier, wouldn't it? Because there are a lot of Christians, when I say this, that say, hey, you know, the flat earth model is a deception. And I received an email from someone who said, there's this guy that's very honest that doesn't believe in the flat earth. And I said, well, honesty really has nothing to do with it. It's a question of observation and looking at this from a rational point of view. Let's take the belief systems and our honesty out of this, because you know, NASA says they're honest. Lying preachers who worship Lucifer but say they worship God say they're honest. So let's take honesty and let's take beliefs out of this. We grow up with our beliefs. We have a certain, you know, a belief system in the government or NASA. People are just going to hang on to that the rest of their life, and they're going to put a globe on their desk, and that's the end of it, because they believe in these people. Now, there's people that read the Bible, or the Quran, I think, is similar in this regard, that say God said, no, this is a round stationary earth. And that's because they interpret or believe the Bible in this sense, and it's hard to change their ideas too, because I think they're going to hang on that more they are on their own eyes, ears, and their investigation into it. So that's what you deal with. So let's take all of that out of this equation today and say this. Well, let me just say, you can't, the one person wrote me and said, simply debunking the sphere does not prove the earth is flat. Now you have to give me something that works, that I can believe in. Okay, I don't want you to believe in it. I want you to consider and to rationalize and to observe and to use certain things without any kind of beliefs, you know? Let's think about what the Hindus said, you know? You got to disbelieve something before you can believe it again. Okay, let's just think about that. So we're looking at a belief system that can change. So let's even get the belief system out of it. And they like to say that once you get over your belief system and once you understand, you know something. You know it. It's like you don't have to believe in a tree, do you? No. I see it. I know it's a tree. You don't have to believe when you look at a flower, a rose, that I don't believe in the rose. I know it's a rose. And so certain groups like the Hindus say they get away from believing in God, but knowing he exists, knowing their creator or their higher power or whatever they say exists, know it. They know. The beliefs are gone. So can we ever know what size and the shape of the earth really is? I think if you rely on your belief systems, you'll never know. But will you ever get to the point of knowing? That question is difficult because most of us don't have the resources to really figure this out. But we do have a way of getting closer to what we consider, for example, when you die, is it important to know what the size and shape of the earth is? No, I mean, you can die with the wrong conception of the earth, and it's not going to change anything, is it? Well, it does in a sense. It changes the idea of, did I really look into this enough? That's why I say this a lot of times. I like looking at subjects like, even if I talk about atheism, from a point of view of how does a person come to this conclusion? How does a person come to this conclusion that the Bible is the Word of God and not something else? How do they do this? And that's always interested me, because I think by looking at this, you begin to think in a way that opens your mind a little bit to everyone. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a spirited discussion with people who have different ideas about things. It's important to understand, though, that you're not here to convince anybody. At least that's the way I look at it. I don't know that I'd ever make a great evangelist for this reason, because I'm not interested too much in changing somebody's beliefs. I'm interested in observing them and understanding how they got to that point, and can they ever change? And if so, why? The facts behind it. And so that's the principle I think I use with this subject. And I find it interesting. A person asked me, now prove the earth is flat. Show me a model that honestly works. Now, how? I mean, I'm not a expert in this, but I can tell you that the one way we could do it is by having the resources and the time to basically head in one direction and see how far we go. All right? I mean, we could figure it out if we wanted to, and we do it through observation, through using techniques of navigation that the old navigators used, by looking. It's an interesting way to prove something, and that's basically seeing it, proving it, seeing it for yourself, understanding it for yourself. But since most 99.9% of us will never get that opportunity, or never get the opportunity to go up in a rocket that'll hit the dome, if there is a dome above us, which many believe there is. And there's some proof about that by people who've sent, during the old Cold War days, they were sending up rockets, both Russia and America, that were trying to pierce that, I believe. Now there we go with beliefs. I don't believe that's what they said, and that's what people think happened. So, yeah, if we go up in a rocket and see how far we go, and do we hit something at the top, that would say that, hey, there's something. I don't think that the scientific things we've been told actually are something that we should rely on. So anyway, here we go. I said there were 3 stories that are most important. 1, are we going to get into a global war? 2, what about the truth behind how the American Atheist Society was formed, and Madalyn Murray O'Hair, the most hated woman in America, and that whole story. And then I'm starting to talk here about the size and shape of the earth. So I guess I'm really doing this first because I want to get it over with before the war breaks out and we won't have time to do it. And secondly, Madalyn Murray O'Hare and the Atheist, I want to do a little bit more work on that and bring that to you maybe in depth next week, because there's some interesting facts here that need to be told. So let's look at my friend here who asked me to do this. I think one of the best ways to do this, I've always wondered about gravity. And if gravity doesn't exist, as we're told, then both the heliocentric spinning Earth around the sun and the stationary globe Earth does not work at all, because it doesn't take one to think. There's no, if gravity doesn't exist, wouldn't we just fall off if we were on the bottom of the Earth? Or if you're on the curvature? Wouldn't water just roll off? Yeah. I mean, that's common sense. I mean, water finds the lowest. Put water on a curved desk or something, it always finds the lowest point, does it? Why shouldn't it find the lowest point on, a globe or a spherical Earth, whether it's stationary or moving? So I think gravity is a key element here. Now, I think we should think, is gravity true or is it a lie? But you know this. If you fill a balloon with helium, something that's lighter than nitrogen, oxygen, and other elements which compose the air around it, the balloon immediately does what? It goes up. Now, if you fill a balloon with hydrogen, a substance even lighter than helium, what happens? The balloon even goes up faster. But if you blow a petal of a rose or a dandelion or something like that out of your hand, a substance that is barely heavier than the air, it will float away and slowly but eventually fall to the ground. Now, if you take a rock or a heavy object, such as an anvil or something that's a lot heavier than air, what does it do? It will quickly and directly fall on your foot and you'll have a broken toe, right? Right to the ground it goes. I don't care how high you're on. Now, this, to me, you have to ask yourself, does this have anything to do or absolutely nothing to do with gravity? Many people say that it has absolutely nothing to do because gravity is a lie. Okay? And now people are going, oh my God, how can he say that? That's what the whole principle of everything is based on. Well, let's look into it a little deeper. Let's debunk one thing. I can't argue this fact, and we can't do this, because somebody once emailed me on this subject a long time ago and said, well, God can do anything. He can suspend water on a globe. He can do anything. Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. However, it's something that I have to basically stay away from, because this explanation that God can do it all will end all debate. And you'll just not look into anything deeper, because you'll just say something like, well, God decided it. I mean, this kind of idea, to me, doesn't. I think God wanted creatures that, people like us and everyone because we have developed brains, to use them, not to just say, well, God deemed it right. For example, somebody kills somebody. Well, God's will. No, we're going to stay away from that. The fact that things rise up. Let me see how much time. Don't want to run out of time. I'm out of time. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.